Hi everyone, today I have a very special guest for you. His name is Sir Samoilenko. He's the communication instructor at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. And finally, I'm getting to have him on the show. We've been talking about it for a while. Actually, Serge, I know him from back at the time when I was a university student myself. I don't know how many years has it been. I can't really even count the years. It's been so long. So thank you, Serge, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you. So today we decided that we were going to talk about personal branding, right? Because
Yes.
it's kind of like the hot thing at the moment. I can't remember anything like this back at the time when I was in undergrad myself doing communication. So what happened since then? I mean, nowadays everyone is talking about having a personal brand. Why is it important to have a personal brand?
Well, I guess last time you saw me in Fairfax, we didn't have such a big thing as social media, right? Well,
That's true.
starting. And so in the last few years, things have changed a lot.
Mhm.
Uh, Before, only big companies or corporations had this power to communicate their message,
Mhm.
and they used public relation departments to contact journalists and communicate the idea through newspapers and magazines.
Mhm.
Nowadays, every individual has an opportunity to set their own agenda, to promote their own ideas, to start new business online.
Mhm.
Simply because everybody has a laptop and everybody has access to social media. Obviously, once you promote your own personal interests, you need to invest in something called, your personal brand, and that makes perfect sense because brand is something that is based on reputation, and this is something that provides positive image about you and about your service.
Okay. Well, like from what I read, like everyone has already got a personal brand. It's just like how we work it and how we promote it. Is it worth like promoting one's personal brand, even though like we're an employee in a company, or is it only for like entrepreneurs and leaders and so on?
Well, so let's talk about what brand is, and that actually needs to be defined from the beginning because
Sure.
everybody can set up their personal account and start promoting this service, but not every product becomes a brand.
Mhm.
And brand is something that is rooted in certain reputation, right? And we're talking most about positive reputation because brands we want to deal with, they don't have negative reputation. Or if they have some negative reputation, I mean, what they offer in exchange in a way outshines their some negative experiences. So in other words, the brand is something that is sustained, something that has been successful for a long time, and what we said, passed this test of time. So in a way, lots of people had good relationships with this particular person and products and services this person represents. But in the age of the internet, some people actually become brands because they have what we call symbolic capital, right? So they have this high public profile because of their investment in online networks, because of their active participation in social media, because of their ability to use advertising to their advantage. So they're everywhere. And this is very interesting and important because, for example, you might not have what we call economic capital, like you might not be rich enough, but you have very strong symbolic capital. So a lot of people recognize you. And then all of a sudden, a lot of companies want to work with you. And because you can be their face, you're famous, you're popular. That's what a lot of people who successful in the internet are known for. They have these successful personal brands, right? And then they link their brands to the brands of other companies they represent. In other words, that's how we get so many influencers online now.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, I think exactly, you're talking about like people who are ready to share a lot of information about themselves and their lives. But what about those who are working in offices? Is it worth for them to like spend time on social media to promote their brand, their messages, their value, their mission? Or is working on the personal brand is just really for the entrepreneurs or influencers and famous people, basically?
So the question is, do they have a brand or do they think they have a brand? Because it all depends what other people think about it. And that's why you have to think about in terms of public opinion. If the audience think that you have a brand and they're ready to follow you, maybe yes. And then the answer is obviously. If you have a big network of followers and people who like you, people who are ready to support whatever you do, then yes. But the second question is, well, how ready are you to do that? Because not everybody is a communicator. Not everybody is able to do that. I know some people who pretty much were famous and popular and had, big network of supporters, but they were just poor communicators. And then they should actually consult someone who is a professional communicator and can train them and help them to become a better one. Or they should outsource branding to the professionals.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's yeah, that's really important. Now, tell me, what are the common mistakes people do when they promote their personal brands?
Right. So there are lots of them, and obviously, it's a long list.
The top ones, like the 5 top ones.
Okay, so let me start with the most common issue that a lot of CEOs and a lot of companies face right now. Obviously, high public profile. High public profile has pros and cons. Because the more high public profile you have, the more recognized and the more popular you are, and there are more people able, just identify you with whatever you represent. However, if you have high public profile, you're more vulnerable to any reputational risks, meaning that there will be someone willing to question your legitimacy or willing to attack your brand. There is one thing in marketing we know is called like brand jacking, when some brands are being hijacked by perpetrators and who use the brands for their own purposes, right? So for example, some brands can be counterfeited. For example, if you represent a good social cause, there will be someone who wants to use your platform to promote their own shady interests, Or if you are a charismatic leader and a CEO who is well-spoken and liked and you represent the company, one day there could be like a scandal, reputational scandal, that might really affect the brand that you represent, that the company that you represent. On the other hand, companies who have low public profile, companies that's not really out there to talk to their multiple supporters, they also miss out because if you are not on the internet, you do not exist, right? And that's the reality of these times.
That's kind of harsh. I heard it yesterday in a workshop and I was like, oh my God, how harsh it is. I mean, if you're not on the internet or social media, it's like you're not there.
Yeah, you're not there. So and that's the truth, because I mean, our perception of reality has changed, and what our physical reality, what virtual reality now, it's the same thing. It's a hybrid now. And true, I mean, if you're not represented in some social networks, I mean, people are less likely to be in touch with you. So does it mean that a company who is not using social media or a person who is not social media is going to be less successful as a business person? No, I mean, I know some examples where companies been doing well without actually having high social profile. But again, it depends on their objectives, what they really want. If they really want to get to a new level, if they really want to go international, to be global, then they can't really survive without joining the internet social networking anymore, because I mean, they have to be there. They have to be present in the lives of their virtual communities. But the higher the profile becomes, the more vulnerable they become for reputational risks, including digital risks like hacking, exposing their confidential information, leaking their materials online, and all different threats.
That's right. So what would you say is the first like top mistake that people do? Like, should they have like a mission and a value that's pretty clear to them before they start communicating, or does it not matter at all?
No, they do. I mean, it's all about being consistent. And the biggest mistake that a lot of companies do that, so they forget about their mission and vision.
Mhm.
And that's the first thing that people look at when they check their websites.
Okay.
So if there is inconsistency between uh, between their words and deeds, what they do and what they preach about, then there is obviously a problem.
Okay.
Those companies less likely to be trusted. Also, not all companies can deal with transparency.
Okay, but when you say company, is it the same in today's world that, you know, like companies, they act the same way as personal brands, like people,
Right.
or they have like a different sort of game? I mean, do they operate on the same level?
Yes and no. Sometimes, and that's where again virtual reality is kind of interesting to us, because there are some companies are known only because of their charismatic leader, and that becomes a problem sometimes, because that's what I was talking about. But speaking of transparency, not everybody's able to deal with transparency, because we all want to know most about, you know, the brands that we interact with.
Mhm.
So we want them to be honest. We want them to be following their mission and vision. We want them to be, you know, selling us good services. On the other hand, the more they become transparent, the more we can actually criticize them when we see something. So it's harder for them to kind of operate. They always have to monitor what people say about them. They always have to kind of be there and to respond. And it's hard. It's really not easy. And then some companies just imitate, or some, you know, people who promote their service, they imitate. They think they're open and transparent, but they're not. Like, for example, they might have a blog, but they might opt out to have the comments section. And that's what's the person to have a blog if you're not willing to talk to people.
Okay, well, yeah, that's very important, is to be able to engage with the audience and the
Yes.
community, and not to avoid those
Yeah.
comments. You know, sometimes we read some comments, we're not really
Yeah.
happy with what's being said, but you should not actually ignore them, but you should
Right.
actually acknowledge them and then respond to the person. Now, tell me, Sarah, like for someone who's just starting out, just they have like a usual like personal Facebook account, Twitter account. What should they do on a daily basis to really start building a real brand?
Well, they should start with their most loyal network, and everybody decides what the loyal network is. I usually start with my friends, who I know they always support any of my new initiatives.
Mhm.
And that's a good way to start, even if you have like 10 people.
Yeah, that's true.
But those 10 people might have strong connections and what we call strong links, right? That lead you to other people who might also have strong links. So, so it's about sometimes not about how many people you have, but about the quality of those opinion leaders that you have on your networks. Then you have to follow the trends. You really have to follow the news. And pretty much everything that you communicate about should be linked to what people care about, what's topical, what's interesting. Another fancy term, we again call it sometimes newsjacking, which is when you insert your own agenda into news agenda of the day. And this is totally legitimate. It's not, I don't see anything unethical about this. I think that's pretty good. Again, as long as you're not taking advantage of some big national news like tragedy, or when you communicate during crisis, or you know, when nobody cares about you and your products and services, right? But pretty much being there and just monitor what people talking about, being able to communicate something relevant. In other words, what people really might find useful.
Okay.
So that might be an answer. But again, the question is, how well are you able to do that? Because not everybody is a communicator.
That's
And
true.
even people who communicators don't follow the news a lot.
That's true. But how much selling, direct selling, should go into those Facebook, Twitter statuses? Like, because nowadays we live in a world where we're just given so many freebies and so much
Right.
information and videos and so on. But how much percentage would you say like direct selling should go into like your Facebook accounts or social media accounts, let's say?
So direct sales, it's a tough question. I'm not a big fan of direct sales simply because I see social media a slightly different environment. It's for interaction, that's for communication, that's for building relationships. And that's what a lot of people hate about direct sales in terms of like using interrupting advertising, trying to push your products and services upon people, try to force, because after a while, even like your loyal clientele, your loyal networks will say, you know, that's enough. You know, we just don't want you just to hustle your products to us. You know, in
Yeah.
other words, why would you do this? So nobody likes this aggressive approach, but in a way, I agree with a lot of visionaries and people who write about marketing, for example, that if you're a good communicator, you should find ways to emphasize the benefits of what you offer. In other words, how your brand can make someone's lives better. In other words, even if you're selling sunglasses, I mean, how those sunglasses actually might be useful on a certain day or in a certain during a certain time. And again, there are ways to do that, but direct aggressive sales, interrupting commercials, just it's not my cup of tea personally.
Yeah, I think it's an outdated kind of like way of advertising.
It's
It,
like pop-up windows, you know, nobody liked those blinking banners and pop-up ads in the early age of the internet, and they
yeah,
were just irritating people.
absolutely. I think we just hit close and we don't really even read them.
Right.
But yeah, now what would you say is your biggest advice for someone starting out? Like, what would you say
Uh,
they should focus on?
so they should again focus on looking at the social networks they have, trying to assess their what we call social capital. What's your social capital? What's your support base? Who are the people who are willing to have your back when you go through some hard times?
How can you assess that really? I mean, do you just look
Mm,
at the number of people and the
longevity of relationships, people. So people you talk to on a regular basis, and also what's important to me, it's the diversity of those connections. Because I'm a big fan of what we call interdisciplinary approach, when you not only talk to people in your own industry, your own area, but you know go beyond. Like for example, I sometimes attend events in like medicine or in technology. I have friends who scientists in biochemistry, robotics. I find fascinating when somebody who studies anthropology can teach me something new, right? Something I don't know. And that's actually, that's the future. If you look at some major trends of 2018, more and more people try to mix things that were incomprehensible to be mixed before. In other words, like how medicine can be mixed with, for example, music, right? Or how electronic health can be linked to some other services like, robotics. So this kind of hybrids and this kind of relationships. That's why, I mean, you have to look at, your networks, you have to look at people who represent, and you see where they work and how they can be useful to you as resources and how you can also be useful to them.
Okay, yeah, it's all about benefiting each other and
It's all
sharing.
about building mutual relationship, because that's what we have friends for. We love them because they are friends, but we also want to help them, and they want to help us.
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely for people who are building their brand, they should focus more on this.
Yeah.
Now, how much should we reveal? I'm saying we because I think I post quite often on social media. So how much should we reveal about our personal lives? Because we're talking about personal brands, but how much should we just show or post pictures with our families or like personal like dinners, etc.? How much should we do that when we have the idea of building an actual brand?
It's a tough question because it's really hard to separate your personal and professional lives. So I would say that people should not be afraid to show their personality and to show their skills. I know that, I have some students, for example, that are extremely timid and extremely insecure when it comes to actually presenting themselves. And I think there is nothing wrong with that. If you have good public speaking skills, or if you have some good skills in fashion, if you have something to share with the audience that you know about the planet, if you care about the environment, or if you support some social cause, be transparent, show this to people. And then those who are loyal to you, those who love you, they'll stick with you, they'll be willing to support what you represent. In terms of sharing your daily updates and where you ate, where you traveled, pictures of your families, that's a tough choice. Sometimes it might backfire, because that's what I was mentioning about, you know, making your public profile too public. There will be always people who might be taking advantage of that. So I guess moderation is a virtue.
Yeah. Well, we don't live in a world of moderation. Like when you have Instagram that's offering you Instagram stories and encouraging you to post like throughout the day, like 24/7, and people are posting what they had for breakfast, for lunch, where we're going. It's just like too much information, and sometimes it's like useless information. Like as a consumer, sometimes when I go through that, I'm like, what's the point of all this?
Yes.
Wasting my time. And I don't really see the point. I mean, so yeah, I think yeah, moderation should really be the key. But at the same time, if you're not active, as you said, you're forgotten and you don't exist in social media.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm a big fan of like what they call humanizing a brand. And you can humanize a brand by showing, telling about your brand from your personal perspective, you know, as a human being. Without using jargon, without using you know, technical words, without trying to be too pushy or too like a salesman.
Yeah.
So there is nothing wrong with that, but again, don't overdo it.
Do you have an example of someone who's nailing it, like as an influencer or a public person who does well between sharing private life and, you know, the brand?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow the social media sites of some of my professional friends, like I have Deirdre Brickenridge, she's the author of several books in public relations and marketing, and she has several platforms. And when it comes to social media platforms, I mean, she's very moderate, and she's very good about like not exposing too much of the personal life, but at the same time, everything she does and everything she shows is very professional. In a way, her brand, her professional brand, is really consistent with her personal brand.
Okay.
That's how people want to see her, as being professional, as being loving, as being caring, as being, you know, person you want to trust. And that's what most people want to know about brands.
Yeah.
So brands we want to trust. So in fact, when there is a consistency between your personal and professional self, then people are more likely to believe you.
Okay. Well, I think we should just think really before we start pushing like post or like sharing photos. Like you should ask yourself, what is the point of this photo? What is the point of this video? How is it going to help my audience or my community or, you know, my friends really? And once you start asking yourself these questions, I think you reframe your messages and the content that you're putting out there. I think this is an exercise I'm going through myself. Like every time I want to share something, I'm like, is it in line with my mission and my vision? And then sometimes, you know, like a cute cat is cute, but it's not gonna serve my community really. So yeah, it's like it gives you a whole nother perspective.
Yes.
All right, sirs, that was really awesome. I enjoyed talking to you. It was really fun. I hope you guys. Sorry.
Let's do it more often.
Obviously, we're gonna do it next time around. I think next time we're gonna be we'll have more time, and then we'll talk more about communication and PR, and especially for entrepreneurs, because most of the people who watch the channel are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs to be. So where can we find you? Do you have a blog?
Yes, I also the co-founder of a new research lab that deals with issues in reputation management.
Wow.
It's called
Sounds
CARP.
so serious.
Yeah, it's called CARP. We'll look at some issues in reputation management, like especially when someone's reputation is being destroyed by perpetrators. And so you can find us on carpwordpress.com, and this is, or you can just Google carp WordPress, and that pretty much talks about what I do and what my co-authors write about. And obviously join me on social networks, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and let's be in touch.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna put down your link to your blog, and then you guys let me know down below what questions you have for Serge, and what is the biggest like struggle that you have at the moment when you're thinking about your brand and building your brand. All right, guys, thank you so much, Serge. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll stay in touch. Bye.
Bye.